While they're trying to figure out the,
Hello. Okay.
I'm going to start without my slides. Hopefully they'll get it working because I've got some really good slides that show this. So my topic today is attachment, from securely attached to reactive attachment disorder. So first of all, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what attachment is, and we've all been through school, so I'll kind of go through this. But attachment is the capacity to form and maintain healthy emotional relationships. And unique features of attachment are bonding with a special person, that's usually a mother, involves soothing, comfort, and pleasure. And the threat or thought of losing that special person creates stress, and there is security and safety in the context of that relationship. So I'm just going to briefly go over the theories of attachment. Bowlby is the father of attachment, and he theorized that in the first 2 years of life, these were critical times for attachment. And he said that all relationships were dependent on this attachment, and he theorized that a break in the parent-infant attachment would result in a trajectory of serious pathology. And I think those words are pretty powerful. And then certainly when we get into red, you'll see how it is, how exactly right he is. So Conrad Lorenz and his geese, does anybody remember this from? Well, he basically had 2 sets of eggs that hatched, and one set of geese, the first thing they saw was the mother, and they followed the mother. Well, the next group, he had the first thing they saw was him, and they followed him around. So that it's that imprinting that he was proving. And then another study that was done was Harlow and the surrogate monkeys. And so, oh yay, okay.
What slide are you on?
So right here, surrogate monkeys, because this is something. Okay, so this was Harry Harlow, who had these 2 rhesus monkeys. Had rhesus monkeys, and he had the 2 mother figures. One was a wire figure, one was a terry cloth figure. The wire figure had the bottle. But what he found was the majority of the baby monkeys went to the terry cloth model because it was soft and more comfortable to be around. So saying that the need for attachment was stronger than the need for food in these monkeys. Eric Erickson, and so the next one. And his stages of psychological development, as we know, is trust versus mistrust, the first year of life, and then the second year is autonomy and shame and doubt. So when there's not attachment or trust, mistrust and shame and doubt are what this child knows. So the next theory is the object relation theory. This is Klein, Winnicott, and Abraham, and this is the one, the good enough mother, where basically we internalize our mothers and we have a relationship with the internal as well as the external mother. So Bruce Perry, next one, he looked at the brain development and attachment, and there is so much work being done right now in the brain. So this was done years and years and years ago, but however, he found out, and he looked at the impact of the developing brain of abuse, neglect, and the implications for future behavior problems. So just go to the next slide, because this says it all. This is a 3-year-old child with a normal brain, what their brain looks like through MRI and extreme neglect. So that is such a physical picture of what actually happens to these children, that is actually their brain is not developing, that it is much smaller than a normal brain. So neglect, abuse has a huge effect on the physical brain. Okay, next one. Healthy attachment is dependent on the mother. They say mother and infant attunement. So attunement then turns to a proper brain wiring. Abuse, neglect, and chronic states of disattunement leads to basically their inability to regulate their emotions. So next slide. During the first 2 years, the human infant is using the right brain hemisphere, and that is nonverbal communication, emotions, intuition. So this is where all their communication, everything has to be with the mother, versus when they get older, it's the left brain, language, speech, rational thoughts. These are undeveloped in a child under 2 or in an infant. So if they're not getting anything, from the mother, any kind of, the mother may be talking to the child, but is doing no good really, because they need that nonverbal holding, and healthy attachment is, based on attunement and results in healthy brain wiring. Next slide. So 83% of right-handed mothers hold their babies on their left side, 78%, so do fathers and apes. So it's that right-left combination where right brain goes to left side. So that's, and if you all have kids, I had to do that thing. I'm like, yep, I sure did. I have my kids on my left hip. So it's that attunement to right hemisphere communication. Okay, Mary Ainsworth. So Mary Ainsworth decided that she was going to do, she came up with the attachment styles. And as we know, there's 4 attachment styles. But what she did something called the stranger situation. Is everyone familiar with that? Mm-hmm. Okay, and there's been videos you see where, so basically what happens, the mother and child are put in or the caregiver, or in most of the videos, their mothers, are put in the room, the child plays, explores, stranger comes in, talks with parent, then approaches the infant, and the mother leaves. Okay, so next slide. So then, that's the first. So, first separation is stranger's behavior is geared to the infant, and then the parent comes back, greets the infant, comforts, then leaves again. So the second one, infant is alone, stranger enters and comes and gears to the behavior of the infant, parent enters, greets infant, picks up infant, stranger leaves. Okay, so basically, so what she was trying to see is how this infant, how this child relates to all these different things going on. And what she's looking for is, number one, the amount of exploration that the child engages in throughout. So is he more interested in the toys or the people? And then the child reaction to the departure and return of the caregiver. So next slide. So this is what she comes up with. Out of this experiment, she came up with the 4 attachment styles, which are secure, avoidant, ambivalent, and disorganized. So secure, the child is upset when the mother leaves and accepts comfort when the mother returns. The avoidant child shows little or no distress when the mother leaves and little response when she returns. So this one is more like interested in the toys and what else is going on. Ambivalent shows sadness when the mother leaves, warms up to the stranger, and then shows ambivalence or even anger when the mother returns. And then lastly, this child, movements, they freeze, they rock upon the mother's return, lack of coherent, organized coping strategy. So they just don't have any, they don't go to anything. They don't go to the toys, they self-soothe. Okay. And so basically here are, that's just a chart of, that was just basically for okay, so next. Okay, so it's secure attachment. So 65% of people are securely attached. So basically they're on target, they play, they're easily comforted, they respond to relationships, they use their caregiver as a secure base. So they have usually very good self-esteem and a good self-concept. Promotes health and physical development, increases resiliency, and this is a word that will be important coming up. So next slide. So as children, secure attachment, they're able to separate from their parent, they seek comfort from parent, and prefers parent to stranger. So like that, at that 6 to 9 month old range, when the child has stranger anxiety, that's a secure attachment. And as adults, they have trusting relationships, good sense of self, comfortable sharing feelings with friends and partners, seek social support. All right, so I threw this one in here. That she didn't talk about the insecure, anxious, and insecure avoidant are similar. There's just one little difference, and there's 20% of the population is anxious / avoidant. So anxious, there have maybe been some attachment, but it may have been inconsistent or abusive. So these are the charming, superficial, emotionally eager to please. These are the chameleons. They're clingy and dependent. Buy friendships, manipulate. All right, so the next one is insecure avoidant. So this was, again, probably a neglectful environment. They make themselves very hard to like. So they fulfill their beliefs about themselves in the world that they deserve rejection. Low self-esteem, avoid feelings, annoying behaviors, rarely distressed, feel safe when in control. So these are the ones that avoid relationships and are the self-soothers. Chatter, that's another one, chatter. Okay, so insecure avoidant, emotions don't work and I must not rely on anybody. So their emotional detachment, lack of trust, relationship challenges as adults. All right, so next one is insecure ambivalent. short emotional fuse, and not being connected. So their main things, they have a hard time controlling behaviors and emotions. They have a confused self-image and relationship challenges as adults, usually with intimacy. They invest very little in the relationship. They're unwilling to share thoughts, feelings. So they, and as a child, they're understood or misunderstood or undervalued. Okay, so disorganized, and these are the really scary ones. These are the ones that have experienced a very chaotic environment in early years and experienced both nurturing and abuse. So they've had a little of both. They've had taste of one and taste of the other. So they've got this usually odd, bizarre behavior because their brain was getting both these signals. So they go from crisis to crisis. These are the drama queens. The sudden burst of anger followed by sudden freezing or daze. They may dissociate any memory of abuse. And psychological disorders. These are the ones usually with personality disorders that go along. Okay. So like I said, these are the scary ones. These are the sociopaths of tomorrow. These are the ones, they're angry, aggressive. They have no strategies for dealing with unwanted emotions. So they have no fear. They become parentification, which they become the parent to the caregiver. So these are the ones that the behavior problems, and this starts at about age 5. So the disorganized, insecure starts very young. Okay, so just the basic quick, the infant, the baby has a need, they cry, need is met, trust develops. At the second year, the child wants. The caregiver sets the limit. The child will accept, test, or defy the limit, and then the caregiver responds appropriately. I probably should have put that in earlier, but okay. So the process of attachment and bonding as an infant, these are the important things. Eye contact and smiles, touch, movement, sounds, basic carbohydrates. So just to break them down, go ahead, next one. Eye contact and smiles, that's pretty easy. You know what, just to look in a child's eyes, to give them a smile. I think they start smiling at 2 to 3 months. All right, so next slide is touch. Hugs, cuddling, kissing, just that physical touch, that oxytocin that they get from touch is really important. Movement, so playing with them, swinging, going down a slide, getting out of a stroller or out of a car seat. A lot of times, or you see pictures in orphanages where these kids are put in cribs and they never got any kind of movement or touch. And voice sounds, of course, singing. Even in utero, they're finding how important it is. That they're finding that you put music in, and these children have a memory of it even after they're born. So soothing voices versus screaming voices. So sound is important. And lastly, basic carbohydrates. So certainly nursing, they say, is the ultimate for the child to get the best carbohydrates or just proper nutrition in general. Okay, so disruptors of bonding. So we said abuse, neglect, separation from primary caregiver, inconsistent or inadequate, follow through, poor parenting skills, separation due to death, prenatal injuries if they're addicted to drugs when they're born, or organic or neurological insults. A lot of this happens when they are in the foster system, when they are given up, either that or put in what they now call group homes, used to be called orphanages. This is mostly that these kids that with RAD come out of this kind of situation. Now there also may be a drug addicted parent or something where they're just neglectful and no one knows, that they're locked in a closet. It's terrible how many times we hear about this, that these kids are chained to the basement floor. So, okay, next. So RAD. So looking at, go to the next one. I didn't take that out. Should be another one. Oh, darn. Okay. So I put the ICD-9 in, but I guess I forgot to include it in. So basically, the DSM-4 criteria is mental disorder associated with care that is grossly pathogenic, fail to relate socially, by markedly bad behavior, indiscriminate social behavior. There is a change to DSM-5. They added something, and I thought I changed the slide, so I apologize. They separate RAD into 2 separate disorders, reactive attachment disorder and social engagement disorder. So that's what happened in 5. ICD-9 describes it as childhood known as RAD, disinhibited attachment disorder, less well known as DAD. That's how ICD-9, or ICD-10, sorry. Okay, so next one. So these are the cluster of symptoms, and these can start as early as infancy, and I'll break them down, and then continue on into adulthood. A lot of times not diagnosed. So I'll break them down. So the next slide, it shows that in infancy, they don't cry appropriately when someone doesn't address their needs. They're listless. They don't reach out. They have no stranger anxiety at 6 to 9 months. They don't no eye contact, self-abusive and self-soothing behaviors, or stiffen and pull away. Which, as we know, the normal reaction of a child is to open themselves up and reach out for a caregiver. And next slide talks about childhood. So I broke these down. So first one is lack of trust. When the infant does not learn to trust the caregiver, they do not trust their environment and in the world in general. They only trust themselves. So they have poor impulse control, poor peer relationships, learning lags, lack of cause and effect thinking. Well, a lot of this could be any of the childhood disorders. So this in combination with the next slide, which is lack of conscience. And this is a huge one in diagnosing RAD. When the child cannot trust the foundation for conscious developments, then the child does not have the capacity for empathy. So neglect and abuse, they can accept authority, either internal, which is their form of conscious, or external, which is parents. So these are children that really, honestly, so they are the ones that are fire, cruelty to animals, really no genuine remorse, no tears. They can look you straight in the eye and lie to you without even, blinking an eye. All right, next slide. So they have extreme control power needs. When the child trusts only themselves, their survival is dependent on them and their resources. So they have a false sense of powerlessness. So this is, lying. Triangulation is a big one with RAD kids. They just love to pin one parent against the other. Lying about the obvious. Food issues, a lot of it's hoarding. It's hoarding food that they're afraid that they're not going to get. A lot of parents have to lock their cabinets because a lot of the time this happens in the middle of the night. Superficially charming and engaging, where they really honestly have no skills to be naturally a kid. Okay, false allegations of abuse, that happens quite a bit. Okay, so next is presumptive entitlement, narcissism, distorted view. This kind of goes hand in hand. The child believes they are all powerful, so they believe they are entitled to everything. So they steal. They destructive to self and others, accident prone. It was an accident. I didn't mean to do it. It was an accident, where clearly their intent was to harm someone or rip up that toy of their friend, and inappropriate demanding and clinging. And then next. So they lacked of affection, belongingness, no tolerance of intimacy. So the child doesn't trust others or his environment, and therefore won't take the risk of reciprocating. So they don't really know how to make friends. They don't understand that whole give and take thing. They're not cuddly, there's no eye contact, they're indiscriminately affectionate with strangers, and their therapist. It's that they really cling to their therapist. And I'll go into that in a little bit, okay. So these are the subtypes of, so there's the isolated RAD, which is sad, no friends, no touching, verbally compliant. The evasive, which is fear of abandonment, clingy, fake, charming, chatterer, he's the chameleon. Defiant, which is the rage, cruelty, charming, self-absorbed, destructive. And that one is usually the sociopath. That's the one that, has anyone watched The Following?
Yes.
That's Joe Carroll, right there. Joe Carroll is the defiant RAD. And bizarre, act crazy, constant noise. So how to assess for RAD? It is a difficult thing and it says trained RAD therapist. So, I don't know who's trained in RAD and who's not. I could not find any kind of, formal training or letters after the name. But, so anyway, to look at the historical information is important. That would indicate this pathogenic care or disruption in the parent-infant bond in the first 2-3 years of life. Like I said, the majority of these kids that come through have been in the foster system. This is the RAD-Q. I'm sorry, I tried to get a copy of this. I had to pay for it, so I couldn't get a copy. But this one seems to be the one that everybody uses, the RAD-Q. There's also the Klein-Helding Adopted and Foster Child Assessment. And then direct observation of parent-child interaction and responses to therapist directives. These are incredibly insightful in watching how, especially the child usually does not go to the mother, will go to the father, will not hug the mother, will not interact with the mother, everything's about the father. Because usually that's what happened in the foster system is they didn't have a mother figure that was secure. And then their drawings say a lot, so that their projected drawings can also help assess for RAD. But to me, it was that direct observation was truly the biggest, and then listening to what the parents had to say about, because there was a couple parents we talked to, and it was one after the other, same thing, they said the same thing. So, okay, so next slide. So just kind of looking at differential diagnosis, and this is kind of more geared towards adults, but it still could be, we don't really diagnose young kids with bipolar. But anyway, so these are just the different, and this is just a slide, actually, again, for your knowledge. I'm going to send out a copy of this so you can have, but just, what is RAD, and then when you're trying to figure out, what you're trying to get rid of if it's not RAD. Next, I think it's also different. Okay, so treatment. So these are the different treatment therapies. Holding therapy this is done between the mother and the child, and there's a proper way that the mother's arms go over the child and the child's arms go around the waist of the mother. And because most RAD kids want to be in control, so they want to be on top. No, they have to go around the waist, and mom or dad goes on top. And it's also, they always want to run to the therapist and hug them first. Nope, they have to hug mom first, then they're allowed to hug therapist. And in the exact same way. Of course, EMDR, drama therapy, narrative therapy, therapy play, therapeutic parenting. Helping People Succeeds has a class for RAD parents, and at the same time they have a group for the children, and that's what I ran. And so I really got a bird's eye view of what these RAD children are like. And boy, if they are not exactly, and the one word that really came over and over again was manipulative. They wanted to get me to do things that, and I didn't know this at first, so they were getting me to do things, and then finally, I got my instructions from my supervisor. Oh, no, they're pushing your buttons, and it seems so innocent. These are little kids, it seems so innocent. However, they were manipulating me and manipulating the situation. Little things. Like doing an art project, they wanted to use the purple and said, no. You need to use this one because this is what is available. So, Tammy, did you want to say something?
In Theraplay, there's certification for Theraplay in order to use that as a mode of treatment, that there is an actual certification program, just like EMDR or guided imagery.
Thank you. And then dyadic, thank you, God, starts out between the therapist and the child, and then the caregiver is brought in, and then, so the ultimate work is with caregiver and child, and just trying to promote this emotional, safe environment for this child, that it is okay to be this way with this caregiver. They're not going anywhere. It's really the basis of it. And resiliency. This is a big buzzword these days. And building resiliency in children with attachment issues is paramount. So when you decrease the risk factors and increase protective factors, you build resiliency in these children. And so the next slide shows the risk factors and the protective factors. So the multiple moves and placements that these foster kids may go through. Absence of a caregiver, abandonment, abuse, neglect, unalleviated pain. If this child is in pain and their pain is not relieved, that is, it's abuse, but it's also a whole different thing of where if the parent doesn't know that child's in pain, it can actually lead to very serious consequences. And so the protective factors being a stable environment, one caregiver, prepared therapeutic parents. That is, if they are going to adopt someone out of the foster care system, they are ready for this, that they know what to look for. Appropriate touch, transference of bond, family support, therapy, mentors. Okay, next. So RAD children can heal. It is a very it takes time. This is something that was, when you think about attachment over a 2-year period and how important it is and what it does to our brain, you saw the pictures, this is something that takes time to heal. This is a story. This is actually someone's daughter. The 25-year-old former rad child was walking on the beach with her mom looking for shells on Mother's Day, and she picked up a shell and said, "Here, Mom, how about this one?" And the mom said, "No, it's a little broken." And she said, "Well, I was a little broken and you didn't get rid of me." And so she adopted this child at like age 10. So it was a lot of years of work, a lot of work on the parents' part, as well as as in being in therapy. And the last thing, I just put some whoops, did I make it? There's some resources there, some websites that if you do think that someone has RAD, there's resources for parents as well as the therapists. There are some institutes that actually just are specifically about RAD. So, any questions?
What is the mention or assessment that projective finds that there's certain patterns that show up with the RAD kids?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more
And
about
yes, and so I have pictures, but I couldn't put them on the slide. I didn't have the actual picture. A lot of times they're either saying that they're gonna hurt somebody, or a lot of them they do the mouth things because they don't. It's what they're saying, and there's a lot of different ones. Let me read one that was my slide that I couldn't. See if I can find it. Okay. Oh shoot, this didn't come out very well. I can't read it, sorry. But she's drawn herself, and she's got all these things coming out of her mouth, and it's things that that she wants, things that she's looking for. So, but like friends, like most kids wouldn't draw that they want friends. They don't know how to make friends, and that was one of the skills we did in our group. Is literally what is appropriate in like meeting someone and meeting a friend and what you would say to them, because they tend to be overboard with these, and all the kids are like, oh my God, they're so annoying. I don't want to be friends with that kid because they just don't know how to appropriately. So we would practice that. So most of the time it's little things like that they will draw, or they'll draw a little kid in the corner, a very, very small little person, and that's them. And I'll see if I can get some copies of some drawings, and I'll attach them to the because it is helpful to see their drawings. I'm sorry I don't have an example, but I will find them and add it to it. But yeah, I think this is really, it is a tough thing to diagnose, because it could be, it's the oppositional disorder or conduct disorder. Then it goes on to be antisocial, and a lot of these people are rad. And that's why I say Joe Carroll, when I was watching the following, like, oh my God, he had to be a rad kid, because he's charming and he's manipulative. He gets all these people, he's basically a serial killer, and he gets all these people to follow him and do his work for him. He's in jail and he gets out. Anyway, and I'm thinking, yep, he definitely had rad, because it's just this, he's like textbook of it. But they do say, the ones that are playing with, obsessed with fire and killing animals, those are the ones that are the scary ones. And they need specific attention and immediate attention. So, and they may not specifically be rad, but there's a good chance that something in their past that they were not properly attached.
Is it possible for a mother to provide appropriate bonding and attachment, but there being something wrong with the brain that they're not able to identify that or accept it, or
With the child's brain?
The child's
Absolutely.
brain,
No. The infant, even if they have, so they are able to attach, because it's nonverbal. In the first 2 years, it's all that right brain.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's something wrong with the right brain.
yeah, they still have the capacity to attach, as long as the caregiver
So you're
is.
saying no, that's not possible.
So if there's a loving caregiver and the child has a brain malfunction and is in the right brain, they can still properly attach. Now, if they're, I mean, I don't know if there's anyone born without a right brain?
Yeah, I don't think you're understanding my
Okay,
my
sorry.
question is if there's something wrong with the child's right brain,
Right.
so that they can't properly attach, even though the parent is providing, is that possible?
No,
Yeah, I don't know, okay.
it's possible to attach. There's not the possibility that brain dysfunction would be
That's
so
what I
great
thought.
That they would be able to
it would
attach?
say
Yeah.
that attachment was impossible.
Yeah.
But what
It
if the
could
kid,
be difficult, but
Right.
it
what if
would
the
be.
kid wasn't attaching, but yet the parent was providing would there be something wrong?
Then that's when yeah.
That's, you know what I mean, like, the mom is providing the attachment, but the kid is not attached, is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like that should be
Then it may be
possible,
something
but-
organic, but, and that the doctor would, you have to take, you know,
Yeah,
yeah.
Then the next step to that, the same question, would that's when we would call the kid antisocial? Or, I mean, because it sounds like the same thing, so
So
how would you do?
antisocial is a personality disorder,
Right.
so.
But at a young age, they look a lot alike.
Well, they're the oppositional defiant kids,
But
yes.
don't they,
Or
but
they're the
okay,
ODD and the
ODD
OCD.
kids, but they look a lot alike, and what if you had a parent that was a good parent and was providing all of that, but then the kid just wasn't, if there's something in their kid's brain that wasn't able to make them attached?
Then that's a personality
I
disorder.
think then you bring the parent and the child together to work with the parent and the child, because a lot of parents might have a great dialogue with another adult.
Yeah.
And they might be able to put I'm a good enough mother, I'm a good enough caregiver. And when you get them in and you start working with them as a didactic unit, that you start to see it isn't consistent. There are mixed messages. There's not clear-cut, full nurturing. There's some stoic, push away, give me a break.
or too
And that
intrusive.
can lead towards some of this behavior, and it's maybe not the most severe form of red, which you see more in your adopted, orphaned,
Yep.
foster children, but that you can, you can definitely, like, because you can get a great story from a parent
Yeah.
about how great they are.
Right.
Exactly.
And then when you actually see the interaction between them and the child, red flags start coming up all over the place. And then, because a child isn't born with an incapacity, they're born with capacity.
Yeah.
And it's the adult that then nurtures that capacity to become something. So, and then you also have to look at, is it attachment or is it, ADHD? And if it's ADHD, even it's in its milder forms, if it's untreated, then it's gonna become ODD and CD.
Right.
It's a continuum.
Right.
So I think you have to look at which area, if you've completely ruled out anything attachment, then you have to look at more your impulse control
There you go.
related things that might lead into some similar things that RAD leads into.
Exactly.
But the origination of it is very, very different.
And the work will be very different, because the work will be based on attachment versus behaviors.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about that, about the therapy that you would do in terms of giving parents guidance on holding kids responsible
Okay, yep.
and different things like that?
And Ginny Jones at HPS did this, so there were things like strong sitting that she taught them. So it was right over left,
Yeah.
right over left or left over right, and yeah. And they would sit for as long as old they are to calm down or whatever. And it's something about right brain over left brain.
You guys have seen me do this.
Have you seen this?
sitting
Yeah.
against the
Yeah,
wall.
she calls it strong sitting.
Yeah.
And yes, you find a quiet place, so I would practice that with the kids. The adults are taught this in their class about strong sitting, the importance of just calming down and getting the brain back in tune, the right left brain back in tune. Because, as they didn't attach, their right brain was, or left brain was not developed. So right brain wasn't given what it needed to. Another thing is fast and snappy is some words that she uses, which are focus, means to focus on the task that I've asked you to do. So they're buzzwords that these children are taught, and that means, yes, you need to do this for me right away. So the things that they remember. I think some of the other things that we did. The hugging thing is a big deal. It really is. And going after our group, the moms and parents would come out, kids would come out. Children had to go hug mom. Every gift we ever made in group was for mom, because most of them were adopted kids from the foster system that I had. One was actually from China, and then the other three were one was actually an older 16-year-old. She was as manipulative as they come. Boy, was she pushing my buttons. The younger ones were just, you could tell that it was easier to do work with the younger ones than as you get to be 16, 17. So, so the hugging part of it was a big deal.
And with your defiant, rad kids too, that's the big thing, that they have to have evidence.
Right.
That if something happens that is harmful or aggressive towards property, people, animals, things like that, that you don't take a conversation about it, that they have to have evidence that there was no intent.
Right.
And if they don't have the evidence, then that they are given consequence based on believing that they had intent.
Yes, exactly.
And so then they very much start to then, manage that piece.
Right.
Because
We're putting the two together.
Rad defined kids don't like consequences.
No.
Do they
No,
have
especially
these
no.
sort of groups for parents and children?
Helping People Succeed does.
And is it like every 6 weeks? Or do you know
She
how-
runs them whenever she's enough parents, I think it was. She actually, the one that I set it on, she did it for an individual parent set because of the transportation issues. So she did it on during the day. So usually during the evening, they bring the kids. So she has group for kids and group for parents. So I'm sure Helping People Succeed, you
But
can call
as a
them.
therapist, could we go into these things and learn what she's, or is it just for parents? I mean, could it be like a?
I don't know. I mean, I got to do it as an intern, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And I imagine she might do some kind of training.
Well, a couple years ago, she did a big training.
Did she?
for
There's a
us.
lot of seminars.
Yeah.
Is there?
There's a
Yeah.
lot of seminars that were, and the conscious discipline, there's a lot.
The conscious.
Well, conscious
design-
discipline is
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
That's not so much, I don't know if Jenny's doing that now, but but conscious discipline really does work.
Yeah.
Redirecting children's behavior, RCB, is also a huge one. Peaceful parenting, Jenny Luther. Stuff works wonderfully with kids that are rad. Setting up a chill out chair,
Mhm.
not doing the whole power struggle with timeout, and just setting up a really comfortable chill out chair that has a basket next to it that has gum and, maybe silly putty and a book and different things, a drink of water and, Teddy Grahams and things like that, so that when they start to get to that place where they acknowledge they're not okay, they're starting to simmer, that they can go to this chill out chair without it becoming punishment. You know.
Those are good too.
And, the big thing with conscious discipline, of course, especially if you're talking little, well, it even goes to big, is touch. Speech. That if you can get them to be nonverbal for a second, and to even, I even have a client who, when I saw him quite a few years ago, was very much a rad kid. And he could be just completely quiet, and I would sit in the middle of the room that he was throwing chairs, losing it and would all of a sudden start to settle and kind of come and sit. And we would do this thing where we would count fingers, 1 to 5, to just touch. And that was it. And that was the only thing, literally, sometimes it would sit for 30 minutes. Or nothing, in the middle of a hallway or in the middle of a classroom that's been cleared out because they took the kids out because he was being so violent. So I think the nonverbal, because they get so offended so easily.
Yeah. Or they know how to manipulate your words. They're
Right.
very easily.
Becomes
So-
an argument.
Right, exactly. Very easily. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that this, when you're working with teenagers or you're working with adults, my experience is looking at where it's all coming from. You have to look, that's the only time where I dig. Like when I see some of these things and that are so conducty, so growing into the personality disorder, that I'll dig and I'll really try and figure out, like, is there attachment stuff back here? Or is this potentially just really untreated ADHD or untreated mood disorder? You know, where did this grow from? Because conduct disorder doesn't grow in itself.
Kind of on those lines with a teenager coming in, because I have one boy that I suspect might have, I don't know if it's rad or just some attachment issues, but he was adopted probably at 18 months old, and the biological parents were drug abusers, so adoptive mothers, amazing, very attentive, but you know, he's just coming to me now as a teenager. So any recommendations as far as that touch for a teen boy, where it would be, you know, because teen boys aren't as open with.
You mean like the hugs and?
Yeah, not between me and him, but things that mom can do.
I think if you hug, that instead of hugging, like, because the holding therapy that I've done is always sitting down, where there's legs wrapped and arms wrapped, right, because they're littler. But I would do like standing.
I guess that's
Yeah.
something I need to.
Where to put their
But
hand on the
standing, you know,
On the
where
shoulder.
you would hug face to face.
Yeah.
But again, child's arms under,
Absolutely.
adult's arms up, because then that's the power differential that's communicated. I'm gonna nurture you.
Yep.
But I'm the authority.
No, that's it, that's exactly it, yes, because they have this control thing, so
Right.
yes, they have to,
And the only other thing that I would think from boys, because I even, you know, being an adoptive mom, there's in utero stuff that's present when you adopt even at birth. That, because if there's been drug abuse or maybe domestic violence or
Anxiety.
even anxiety and depression because of the upcoming knowing that you're gonna give birth to this child and you're gonna surrender the child to another family, that there are many things that can happen, I think, in utero that do affect not just brain development, but affect the state at which a child is born. And, you know, and I just think, like, things that I do now with my boys is I do like boy things, right? Where like I'll do like tickle things, we're like tag, where I'll run after them and tackle them and do things like that. Or, you know, or even get really inappropriate and do the ah! You know,
why is that inappropriate?
And for them, that's really connecting. Like when we're in a really bad place, if I all of a sudden break down and get really super silly with them, or sometimes I'll dance, and then invariably that ends up everybody laughing on the floor. You know what I mean? But that's connecting on a teenage level, because it's, you know, like even the comment comes out, Mom, you're not a teenager anymore. That looks really goofy when you do that. You know what I mean? Like.
But they say it's important that it's mom doing it and not dad, that they usually have no problem attaching to dad, it's mom.
Yeah.
And the attachment to dad isn't as important.
And you know, for a teenage boy, I mean, it is, but they have no problem with it. And even the girls have no problem. It's always mom. It always seems to be mom
Because
that they
it's the
have.
main nurturer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't
It's
get
the
that.
main
Yeah.
nurturer.
But I see teenagers sometimes, like if the mom's trying to show some affection, say to the teenage girl, I've seen it more with teenagers, like they just like recoil, like they don't want to be touched. I'm talking about 13-year-old, like the mom will be like all of a sudden like want to put her arm around, and you just see the kid. I don't know if that's just normal teenage stuff.
I
because
joke with my girl, I go like this.
She's like, don't touch me, mom.
Right, isn't that some of that developmental
Yeah.
same
So I
parenting
think
stuff
so.
where
That's what I'm
you're starting to try to begin your individuation?
Yeah.
So,
Because I
you know, your
noticed that.
same-sex parent's gonna be the parent who you're gonna focus your individuation with. Like, I wanna be different than this person.
Yeah.
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 I've
Yeah.
gotta be different to become myself.
Yeah.
Don't let me
So
grow.
it's like,
Because they're more lovey-dovey
That's
towards
the-
dad,
that's
and
the
you're
secure
right.
child. I don't wanna
And
feel like
the
that.
switches. The male might be more lovey-dovey towards the
Oh,
mom.
yeah, because boys have the, with their dads when they're teenagers, even preteens. But they don't have a moms are both.
Where's a place to go to find the process of doing some of these therapies, like doing the hugging therapy?
And the resources are at the
You're
end.
gonna send them.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know why it didn't
it's
show
all
up,
gonna be
but
on FYI.
Uh-huh.
yes.
The entire packet of all of her slides,
Yeah.
plus the resources at the
Yeah.
end. So, and didn't you also have a copy of the assessment or no?
I couldn't get it. It
I
wouldn't
think
let
we
me.
actually might have a copy of it that
Okay.
Ginny gave us.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
So-
I couldn't find it, and like I said, I tried to get it all online, and they wanted me to pay for it.
You mean like the one that you said, the Randolph?
The RADQ, yeah, the Randolph. That's
The Randolph,
that's the one that's most
Thank you.
popularly
If you
used.
guys could fill these out, please, before you leave. And I will be putting the certificates in everybody's box.
Lynn, is it DG or just G?
DG, WAY, no E.
No E
No E.
afterwards.
No E in Lynn, no E in Ridgeway. I didn't sign in.
R-I-D.